Hello. Hi, folks. Hello, welcome back. And thank you. Can I get a show of hands? Who are you that are attending with me for the first time just now? This will be your first session. Okay, we have a few. And many of us have been at multiple sessions. Fantastic. I will try not to tell the same jokes. We'll see if I can remember what I've said and what I haven't. Okay, so we are talking about strong foundations, rules, and boundaries. Parents wish they would have started earlier, and we'll get there. We'll get to some of those. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'm a dad. I'm a former teacher. I'm a former technology leader in schools. I've pivoted 3 years ago to really working with parents on how to parent in the digital age. How can we support our young people? There's a lot of fear out there. In fact, one of the conversations I was having during the break there was about all of the stuff that's really scary that we read about kids and screens. And how do we kind of deal with that and think about that in conjunction with some of the stuff we've been talking here about? Well, my goal is that you leave here a little less fearful. I suspect that some of you are here because you've read some of the scary stuff and you've got some concerns, and we should be concerned about our kids. I do think there's a lot of stuff out there that's not necessarily pointed at solutions. How can we coach and guide and mentor our young people to thrive in this world? This is the world they're going into. It doesn't mean that we need to give 5-year-olds phones, but eventually those 5-year-olds will have a phone. I don't know when that is. For some of you, it might be when they leave the house and they're 18 and they get to have a phone. But we've talked about in all of my sessions that we're going to slowly, in a scaffolded way, in an intentional way, we're going to give them more freedoms over time until when they're 18, they have had all of the freedoms and they leave the house and they have all the freedoms. And we feel really confident that they are trained up. And one of the things I talk about over and over again is this idea that our influence is more important for their long-time health than our control. We're going to turn on parental controls when they're young. We're going to use them, and we're going to slowly reduce them until there's no more parental controls. And those parental controls will not continue to impact them in their future. But the conversations we have had with them and the modeling that we did with them could impact them in the future. Those of you that were with us in this last session, we talked about the importance of mentoring and modeling, talking with our kids and demonstrating how to be healthy, because that is how we can influence them forever. We hope that our voice is still sort of with them. Our example is still sort of with them. They consider the values that we hopefully modeled for them as they make choices in their own future. And so, yes, we want to turn on controls and slowly prepare them for their future. And that's what I hope that you leave with, is a little bit of hope that actually there's some strategies you can employ to feel a little bit better about how your child is going to be an ethical, independent decision maker in the future. Anyway, that's me. That's what I'm trying to do in the world. That's my family. That's Oscar. That's Becky. And I'm in this parenting journey with you, and I hopefully these ideas and the things that you learn when you're talking with your neighbors are really impactful and help you to feel more hopeful. In this session, these are the objectives. We're going to look at clear and effective rules for parents to follow. Oh, you thought I was going to give you rules for the kids. These are rules for you, more mindsets really to think about. You're going to define and implement appropriate boundaries for our children. Our kids do need boundaries. Some of us actually could use some boundaries. Some of us are struggling with putting this thing away. And of course, so our kids with a less developed brain will need some boundaries. We're gonna think about creating contracts or agreements to enhance accountability, and we'll talk a bit about that. And we're going to develop and apply practical strategies to put in place for addressing common parenting challenges. And I'm actually just going to share with you a story that I just was having a conversation with a parent here. Just because I think it exemplifies sort of some mindsets about what we can do when we're setting up boundaries and rules for kids. So this family has a rule of 40 minutes of iPad time, which is actually very similar to what I did when a certain age of my kid, there was a 30-minute time. And there's a little bit of a struggle with putting the device away at the end of the time. Anybody experienced that before? The child doesn't want to put the thing away, right? Okay, so this is all of us, many of us. And so that can be a struggle. So one of the things that I tested out on my own child, but it would be something that people might want to do, is I wanted to not have it be me who's saying to put the device away anymore. We agreed on 30 minutes. And so, of course, my child doesn't have much of a choice in that. Like, I agreed 30 minutes, and he's going to go with that. And so what I did is I said, you're going to set the timer. I don't want to be the timer. I don't want to be the one saying, time's up, put it away every day, because that puts me like this. So in many of our thinking about rules and boundaries, can we give any ownership over to them? And so what I did with a timer, as I said, okay, here's the iPad, and actually I didn't say here's the iPad, I said there's the iPad. When you are going to use your 30 minutes, you grab it, you set a timer for 30 minutes, you play, and when that timer goes off, you put it away. And a lot of people are thinking, my kid would never do that. All right, that's fine. If the kid doesn't do it, the next day the iPad is not there anymore. Because today, we earned no iPad time from being able to have it be flawlessly simple in our family the day before. It's okay to have consequences, right? It's okay to have consequences. My kid can go a day without an iPad. Some of you are thinking, we don't ever want our kids using technology. Okay, well then this should be a good strategy for you. That a consequence is the iPad goes away for a day. iPad goes away for a day, and then we try again. We're going to try again. I want my kid to be able to self-manage. Well, he can't. Okay, but I want him to try. So I'm going to have him set the timer, and I want when the timer goes off that it gets put away. I don't want asking for extra minutes. If they keep asking for extra minutes, now we're going to set the timer for 25 minutes. And that way then they can set a 5-minute timer, and they're giving themselves a warning. Isn't that what we've done with kids before? We've given them a warning because they have a hard time leaving the pool. Have you ever had that? The kid doesn't want to leave the pool. They're having a great time. The pool's not digital, but it's really fun to swim. They don't want to stop. So we give them a warning. Hey, we're leaving in 5 minutes. It lets them get prepared for leaving. So now we use the timer as a warning. You set 2 timers. You set a 25-minute timer, and then you set a 30-minute timer. When that 25-minute timer goes off, you're giving yourself a warning. If you want to say it out loud, you say, I've got 5 minutes left. In fact, maybe we do that. Maybe so, because I'm kind of watching. I have my kid say, I've got 5 minutes left. Okay. And then we're going to hear that second timer, and then he's going to go put it away. And we're going to practice that. I'm never saying, put it away. Put it away. I'm not doing that. It's simple. That kid went over 5 minutes. Tomorrow the iPad's not even there. I've locked it away in a cupboard. And we're really calm about it. But I'm giving him some opportunity to sort of practice the self-control. And I'm removing myself from being this. I don't want to be this. That's not what I planned to talk about, but I thought, that's a great little example. Okay, so 6 rules for parents to follow. 1, these are mindsets for us. 1 is quality trumps quantity. A lot of us are worried, and I just told a time-based thing. Only 30 minutes, only 40 minutes, only an hour and a half, whatever. Like, time is easy to measure. And that's one consideration. You don't want it to take over their entire life. 24 hours of screen time would be bad. But there really is no difference between 30 minutes and 35 minutes, an hour and 47 minutes. So this is arbitrary, and that's fine. You're going to set some time limits because they're easy to measure. But what we really want to think about is the quality of the activity our child is doing. So a couple ways to think about that. 1 is active versus passive. It is better for your kid to play on the iPad and be able to show you something at the end. Here's what I did. Versus, I just watched YouTube for a half hour. I passively watched, or I actively created. What's the quality of the activity? It was still 30 minutes. But if at the end your kid can show you, look what I did, and they're really proud. Nobody is proud of watching 30 minutes of YouTube. In fact, if you gave your kid an hour or an hour and a half, let's say you're at this hour and a half stage of your lives, and they watched YouTube the whole time, and they actually love Minecraft or Roblox or whatever else, but they got into YouTube first and they stayed there for an hour and a half, they actually might feel some regret. Because they even feel that it's not as good as creating something, as building something, as interacting. So I know video games get a bad rap. Some video games actually have creative opportunities in them. They have be a good teammate opportunities in them. And so we just want to be thinking about what is the quality of the activity my child is doing as well as the time. The quality of the activity is more important than time. And of course, if we could be monitoring, that's what the last session was about, and we could be having conversations with our child about that. But passive versus active screen time. And I walked up to a couple students I was in a school in Europe, and I walked up to these students, and it was before school, and they were on their laptops, and there was a lot of chatter going on. They were talking to each other. And I walked up, and I couldn't see what they were doing. And I said, hey, so what are you guys doing? And I knew what they were doing because I was familiar with the sounds coming from the screens. And they were like, it's a math game. I was like, you guys, I know what that is. You're playing Minecraft. Like, why would you say that? And they were like, because you're an adult. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting, right? They're thinking if they're doing something math-based, I would really value that. I actually valued that they were having conversations. If it's something that they can do with other people, right? We value that too. So active versus passive, relational versus alone. I think interacting with others has some opportunities for growth that being alone doesn't. So a video game where you just play by yourself is not quite as good as a video game where you're having to be a good friend, be a good teammate, be a collaborator. We value those things. I was talking with the middle school students the other day about using those types of words. You got to think of the things that your parents like and talk about your video games with them that way. So you should be prepared for that. Kids are going to come home and talk about how they like to collaborate in this video game. But we want them to know that. We want them to be able to see that too. Like, we do value collaboration. So we want to be thinking about these things. We also want to be thinking about what's it replacing. Right, a half hour of screen time, if that's all you're giving right now, like there's no way that that's replacing sleep, physical activity. Like, it's not enough time to get in the way. But if your child is at the point where they're spending 3 hours a day doing something, it's not the 3 hours. It's what's it replacing. Did they stop being involved in a friend group so that they can just play this video game? Now that's an issue. Because whatever they're doing is replacing these other really quality things in their lives. It's not necessarily that it's 3 hours. It's that they're no longer running cross country. It's that they're no longer on the chess team having fun conversations about critical thinking and strategy and whatever. I talked with a parent. This was in another European school, and she said, I'm going to go home and I'm going to have to fix some things with my kid because I've been arguing about his screen time. And I said, well, what is your kid doing? And she said, well, he's got this application on his laptop, and he is designing a pipe organ. This is a musical instrument. And I said to her, you do realize that every other parent in the world is jealous that your child is designing musical instruments on their laptop when my kid is playing Roblox or scrolling Instagram or whatever, right? But that's what we have to think about. Like, if your kid is there too much time designing musical instruments? Maybe if it's replacing other things, if it's keeping him from sleep, that's a problem, right? So this is just a mindset we have to have as we approach any sort of rules and boundaries. Yes, we're going to think about time, but it's actually the quality of the activity, and is it getting in the way of other things essential to health that we want to think about? All right, those of you that were just in my session, we talked about this, right? We got to realize this. They are watching us. They are watching us. What are we doing that models healthy behavior, healthy balance of physical world and online world? What are we doing? And I know I've told this story 2 days ago, but maybe some of you have already forgotten it. But this idea that my son was seeing me with my phone in my bedroom every night when he walked past the hallway. He walked down the hallway and he saw me there. And so I eventually realized, man, I'm showing him that adults use their phones in their bed. Once you get in charge of your own life, you can be really unhealthy. And that's not the message I wanted him to get. And so I'm trying to stop doing that. What are the things where we could really model? Are we modeling that human connection's really important? And so we all put our devices down when we have a family dinner. I don't know if you have a family dinner in your lives, if you have that opportunity to sit down together. But if you do, you could say, these relationships are really important, so we're going to put down our phones. We're not going to watch TV while we're having this dinner. We also talked about, we have done many of us have made a mistake when our kids were little and we handed them this phone to keep them quiet. Because as a middle schooler or a high schooler, we're thinking they've just got this in front of their face and they're not talking to us as a family. They're pacifying their mind. We've got to undo some of the modeling that we did, but they're watching us. 3, we want to plan for the alternatives. We need to be thinking, what is it that I actually want my kid to be doing? And those of you right now that are in a good space, write down what it is your kid is doing. Because you will forget a few years later when you and your child are sort of battling over how much screen time they have. You're going to forget, what did our family used to do when we weren't on screens all the time? So you've got to know what those alternatives are. For parents of our youngest kids, you have to carry a bag with you when you go out of the house that has all the alternatives in it. If you don't want to hand them a phone to keep them quiet at the restaurant, which you don't want to do, what are you going to hand them? Play-Doh, a toy, Legos, coloring book, pencils, I don't know. Snacks. You got to carry that with you, because otherwise they're going to do this other thing. There's a couple ways to think about this. One, we do need to plan for the alternatives. We need to know what we want our kids to do. And if you're struggling with your teen right now, that's really hard to think about. What do I want a teenager to do besides homework, the instrument, the extra tutoring, go to school, be on the sports team and run around, get good grades? What else do I want them to do? Because if they have a moment in their day, they're going to be like, I want to be with my friends. And when they're at home with you, their friends are here in their pocket on this phone. So they're going to want to do that. And that's okay. It's okay. Of course they want to be with their friends. You're going to have a limit at the end of the day to that. Like, when do we stop interacting with others? What time does that phone go to bed? But if you haven't thought about what the alternatives are, they can't think of the alternatives. It could be a family walk after dinner. We all put our phones down and we go for a walk. That's an alternative for any age. But if you can't think of other things, you can understand why they're going to go to their phone. They're getting great grades. They're done with their homework. They've practiced the instrument, yada, yada. What do you want them to do? Color? At 14, 15? No. I want them to read a book. All right, now they've read a book. And then what? And so we have to either be okay with them having some screen time that they're going to choose. Is there an hour in the day? Depending on the age of your kid, how many hours in the day do they have any choice of what they're doing? And might some of it be on a screen? And what could that look like? Of course, we don't want screen time impacting their sleep, their physical activity, all these things. But we need to know what else it is. Okay, so I had a recent situation where I was feeling like, man, my kid's always on their phone. And the truth is, my kid's not always on their phone. But I was feeling that, right? Sometimes we have that like, yeah. In fact, the kids the other day told me they do their homework for 50 minutes, then you walk in the room the 5 minutes that they were looking at their phone. And then they get scolded. Like, many of them told me this is what happens every day and of course that's not exactly real, but that's how they feel. Anyway, in my life, my son has about 20 minutes in the morning between when he's had his breakfast and when he's gotten ready for school, and I'm going to drive him to school. And he's got about 20 minutes in there And I was getting irritated because he's over on his phone every morning for these 20 minutes. And I'm thinking, I'm a bad parent. I should be figuring this out. Like, how do I not? And I could not think of an alternative. And so I became okay with it. Because there was, like, what did I want a 15-year-old doing for these 20 minutes? His homework is done. He did it last night. He worked out last night. He did all the things we've asked him to do around the house. He took out the compost and he took out the garbage. So I've decided those 20 minutes aren't going to bother me. I also look at his screen time and I know that it's not out of control. It's at a level where I'm like, yeah, that's probably... I look at the specific, go back to the quality one. I look at what is he doing? All right, 20 minutes of whatever he's doing. I'm not seeing any problem. I'm not sensing a problem. And so I actually used this to be like, actually, I'm okay with these 20 minutes or his like veg out time before school. Fine. I'm okay with it. But we need to think about what are those alternatives. And when you think about our youngest kids, when they have something in their hand that we don't want them to have, we learned this early. We trade them, right? We trade them. You get your list, and this is what you're doing. They're going to pick the device, so you're picking the other thing, and you got to make that happen for them. It's also okay if they're bored. It's okay. Like boredom is, we don't value boredom. What we value is what comes out of boredom. What comes out of boredom is creativity, new ideas, invention. When you are alone with your own thoughts, we actually don't value kids being able to sit in a car and not have a screen and look out the window. People say that. That's not what we value. We value being alone with your own thoughts. We value taking a break from podcasts and Instagram reels and the next YouTube video and the next article and our email. As adults, think about it. Sometimes your best ideas are in the shower because it's the only time you don't have other people's ideas coming into your own head. We value that for our kids too. It's okay to have an hour in the day where we say, actually, this is just an hour where there is no screen time. That's the alternative. The alternative to screens at this time is none. No screens. That's all I'm telling you. As a parent, you figure it out. It'd be interesting to see what comes out of that. So you can do that too. Rule number 4, we want to keep them talking. Anything we can do to keep our kids talking allows us to do what we were talking about in our last session, which is mentorship. If our kids are talking with us, even asking questions, we are mentoring. Well, how do you think that kid felt when that happened? That's a question that is mentoring. That's a question getting the kid to be empathetic. You're modeling that. You're asking them to be empathetic. You're giving them some practice. But too often, we will say no to a question or they're asking for a new thing. Again, I mentioned this earlier. Not yet is often a better answer because it keeps the conversation going. You can ask questions like, tell me more about that. Tell me why you want that. We want to keep them talking because so many of you, when your kid is 15, 16, 17, 18, they're no longer talking. By the way, that is a natural thing. They're going to lean, adolescents, they're going to lean more to their peers and away from you. But there are things we can do to keep it sort of natural and normal to be talking about our online lives. And we want to be talking about online as much as offline. I already mentioned the mother that I spoke with today who sits down next to her child and watches the video game so they can talk about the online life. She's not interested in the game, but she's interested in her kids' growth and interest and whatever, and so she's just going to lean into that because maybe that's an opportunity for another conversation as well. I would also say another part of this is that nothing's urgent. Your kid's going to come home and they're going to ask for the new app. This is a great time, a great way to keep them talking. Don't give it to them on that day. Ask them questions. So now why do you want this? What are you doing this? How does it match our family values? You're going to get 3 or 4 days of talking from them in 10-minute increments. And then you might in the end say yes or no, but you kept them talking. Every time they approach you with one of these things, we want to be thinking about how do we keep this conversation going? because there's going to be a time they need to talk to us. They need help. They don't understand how to navigate this situation. And you don't either, because you didn't have this when you were a teenager, but you have experience in life with de-escalating conflict. You have lots of experience. And so it's just online, and they'll need some help with it. We have to shift the boundaries together. You're going to make a rule. You're going to turn on some parental controls. And eventually, those are all off. The rules are gone, and they are leaving the house. This is gradual release. You're being intentional about this. One of the ways to think about this is every rule I make, I should be thinking about when do I think that rule might kind of be over. My own child, we had a rule: you cannot touch the remote control to the TV. That's not for kids. And he knew the rule because he'd sometimes come over and point to it and be like, closed. Because that's the language. We try to not say no so much as closed. Because closed can also be open at some point, but that's closed. That's closed for the foreseeable future. That's closed. And he would point and say closed. And just the other day, I saw him sitting on the couch with the remote control in his hand. Because he's 15 now. That rule didn't stick. And I don't even remember the day that we said, now you're allowed to touch the remote control. But it happened naturally over time, right? This wasn't defiance or anything like that. Our rules will shift. If we can talk about them, our kid can know things are going to change. A parent yesterday went home and said to their child that doesn't have a phone, like, you will have a phone someday. Or like, am I ever going to let you have a phone? They're like, yeah. Okay. Just checking. Just checking that you and I are on the same page. Like, we're going to do this journey together, and we're going to slowly release. But we want to shift those boundaries together. Otherwise, they're going underground, and they're not talking to us, and the boundaries are shifting, and we don't know. I talked with a parent in Vienna, and they had said no to Snapchat. The next year, they said no to Snapchat. The next year, they said no to Snapchat, and now their daughter doesn't ask anymore. And the parent said, and what I found out recently is, of course, my daughter has Snapchat. My daughter's not asking anymore because she did it on her own without me knowing, and now I'm in this tough spot of, how do I bring this up that I know she's got it? She broke a rule, and also this parent is dealing with the fact that, well, of course she broke a rule. All of her friends have been on Snapchat for years. That's where the communication for that group is happening. I'm saying no, end of story, no communication about it. It's been a year. My kid's solving this. My kid is solving, I need to be in the know with my friends. And I'm not saying this kid did the right thing. I'm saying this parent found themselves in quite a conundrum because they didn't know what to do. They were like, I do need to confront my child. This is a tough one. And when I do and I take away Snapchat, I'm taking away her connection with her friends. This is a tough spot. And I actually don't really want to do that, but I also want her to know that we got to follow the rules around it. It was a tough spot. But she didn't have the communication. She wasn't talking about, you're going to eventually have Snapchat. And so this kid just solved it. Rule number 6, we want to be on screens together. We want to be on screens together. We want to make screens not this thing where it's kids in a kid's world with no supervision, no accountability. And so I talked with some parents today who are monitoring their children's text messages right now. Again, on our scale here, eventually that needs to stop. If your 18-year-old knows you're reading their text messages, guess what? They're not actually, those are all fake. Right? Those are all fake. They've gone somewhere else. You do want to monitor in the beginning. You want to make sure by the time you let them have messaging without you, that you've seen them being kind to other people. You've seen them making wise choices. You've talked about that. And then we eventually, wherever that is in your family, you're not going to be reading their messages anymore. And maybe for some of you that's 18. Maybe that works in your family. I don't know. You also might realize, this kid does not need me reading all their text messages. You might get to that point. But we want to be on screens together. That might start with monitoring. That might be sitting down next to your kid while they're playing a game. It might be the first time they get social media that you're in social media with them. It might be that you have your family text chat group and you're just modeling, this is what we do. It might even, eventually it's like, I'm coming to pick you up, right? A lot of it is just sort of logistical that we use it together and we try to, use it more. I did a joint parent-student session the other day and I was encouraging the teenagers, send your parents a selfie. My goodness, you're sending Snapchats all day. Take one for your parents. Like, wouldn't that be nice if you just got a little message? Right now, when I'm away, my son, we're supposed to do it every day. But about every other day, I get a video message from him. He tells me about his day, because I'm not there. And we're in the wrong time zone for it to be easy. So he sends me a video message. He's not telling me everything, but he's kind of filling me in on what's good. He just went to homecoming. He's telling me, he also sent me a photo of his date and, him in his suit. And we use screens together. These aren't just a teenage thing. We want to be there with them. How can we do that? Sometimes it's as simple as watching a movie together. Family movie night. As your child gets older, we pick things that, I'm picking stuff from my childhood. We watched Top Gun together because when I was a kid, I got to see Top Gun, and then the new one came out. And what's funny is there was a scene my parents would fast forward or close my eyes during the first one, right? But I'm not doing that with him, and we can talk about these things. A movie is often a great opportunity to mentor. Because tomorrow you can say, hey, remember in that movie when this person did that? What'd you think about that? What would you have done in that situation? There's actually some great movies about the negative side of screens. There's, what was it, a year ago, Adolescence came out on Netflix. And someone today reminded me of, I think it's called Social Studies, and I haven't seen that one yet. And then there's a bunch out there. You can look them up. What a great thing to watch with your teenager. Not to scold them or bonk them on the head, but to be like, what do you think about that? Is that something I should be concerned of as a parent? Do you know how these apps and games are trying to control us? Do you ever feel that way? I think I mentioned to you that with the high school students, I talked with them about how the app designers and game designers have really tried to just make us not put our phones down. That is their goal. And the kids are really receptive to that information. They don't want to be tricked. So talking with them about that, but using it together, my son asked me to join his group of 8th graders, this was a few years ago, in Clash Royale, which I know a lot of your kids are playing because when I mentioned it, the crowd went, ah! So they're playing Clash Royale, if you didn't know that. And anyway, a few years ago, I was playing that with my son when he was an 8th grader and all his buddies. But it was a great opportunity I didn't want to play the game. I wasn't interested in wasting all my time doing that. But I also got some good street cred when I was doing better than all the other 8th grade boys. I didn't do that for long because I didn't want to waste my life playing Clash Royale. But what it allowed me to do is be able to talk with them later about, have you noticed in this game that it's doing this? When you get really close to the next level, it actually, you lose 10 in a row because it wants you to get so frustrated that you'll go pay for the next thing that you need to get to the next level. And of course, they're like, oh, yes, I hate, right. Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about how these things are impacting our lives negatively and that people are trying to control us. But to do that, we need to be on screens together. The first time your kid gets social media, you're there with them. You're doing the first one with them. I did want to say one more thing about the video game thing because I know that it's such a big area of conflict in families, and it doesn't have to be. There are video games that are quality, Minecraft being one of them. It was created before people figured out this attention economy thing. Minecraft was actually built to be a great game. It was built to be amazing for the players. And it's a game that kids will play as a kid, and then they'll actually circle back to. They'll leave it for a while, and then they'll come back to it because it's such a great game. That is not going to happen with Clash Royale, which they're all playing right now. It's not a great game. It is a grinding game. It's a frustrating game. It's built to make you pay money and keep your attention. And so they will, when they leave that and move to the next thing, they won't go back. But Minecraft is such a great game, kids keep coming back to it over the years. And it's because you can create stuff and you can collaborate and you can be a good teammate. And the creativity component is really high. I've lost my train of thought. What was I saying about being, and sitting down next to kids, right? So we have a bias about these games. Some of these games can have social benefits, cognitive benefits, there's critical thinking, there's creativity, there's collaboration. And so it doesn't hurt for us to just show a little interest in that. And again, you don't like the game, but you'll go to watch your kid play a physical sport, even though they're terrible at it. Really, they are. Like in comparison to the world's best football players, your kids are awful. But you'll go watch because you love your kid. Right? I'm making the point that you're not there to see high quality football. It's not that you enjoy seeing that football. You enjoy seeing your kid. You want to show them, we believe in physical activity. This is all really good stuff. You're supporting it. But you could watch them play a video game, not for as long. They're actually quite good at the video game, some of them. You'll see high quality video game, which you don't care about. I understand that. But what you're doing is you're saying, hey, I'm interested that you have an interest. I want to support you. And the same questions you would ask a kid after a physical game, you could ask them about their digital game. Who did you play with? Did you have a good time? Did you win? Oh, you lost? Well, better luck next time. I mean, all the same stuff. And what you're doing is you are doing a lot of these rules that we just talked about. You're, one, being on screens together. You're saying, that's not your private little world. I'm gonna kind of be paying attention to what you're doing online as well. Okay. We're now going to take a look at, so those are the 6 rules for parents, and really mindsets. And now we're going to take a look at a family media agreement. And I think if I'm passing this out while at the same time I'm talking, you'll just be focused on this. So let me just say this first. This idea is about writing down the rules, the boundaries in your home, and having a written copy of them. And I'm going to talk about why there's a great benefit to this, and it's because it's a third point. When you and your child are talking about the rules, you're the rule owner, and they're the one having to be held accountable to the rule, and it puts you in conflict. But when you have this third point, because you made an agreement, this third point is over here, you and the child are over here, 1, 2, 3, you are a team trying to achieve this thing. And it puts you in a better position. You're no longer in conflict with the child. You're actually on their side, asking them, how can I help you to get back to this agreement that we made together? It makes you a team instead of opponents. No, writing it down and having them sign it will not mean that they will now follow it 100%. They will still make mistakes. But because we know mistakes are going to be made, instead of you two going head to head, you get to come alongside them and say, hey, I noticed that you weren't able to put away the iPad, like we said. We agreed that it would only be 30 minutes, and I realized that I saw you played longer than 30 minutes, and the timer went off, and you didn't put it away. How can I help you? What do we need to change so that you can achieve this that we created together? So that's the idea. We went over there. Let's go over here. If you pass those sort of this way, we just need to here, maybe go back behind you. Do you have them here? I'm going to go a few over here. And there's a bunch here, and we may not have enough, or we may have enough. I'm not sure. I'll just pass those back in your direction. And we may have to tear them. We need a few here. Do we have any extras? Oh, we got one. Great. All right. So here's the deal with theirs. There's 3 different agreements there. Do you know how many of them are perfect for your family? 0. There is not a one-size-all solution to this. You cannot take someone else's agreement and apply it to your family and think, oh, this is going to work. Because Nobody knew your family and who created these. Nobody knows your kid. You're going to need to create your own. But what is nice about looking at other ones is that we can think about what might work for our family. What could we steal? What's a good idea? And so that's what we're going to do here. What I'd like you to do, and I think I'm going to set a timer for maybe just 3 minutes, what I'm going to have you do is try to group up in groups of 3 or 4. There are, may I borrow yours for a second? There is this front page. You'll notice it has a number 1 up here in the corner. That's agreement number 1. If you open up the page, there's one that's a long typed out thing. That's agreement number 2. That's actually a letter from a mom to her son. And then the last page is double-sided. It's from Common Sense Media. That's number 3. So if you would get into groups of 3, you're only going to read 1. Or if you're in a group of 2 and you just take it in half, you can just do 2 of them. And here's what you're doing. You're going to star, if you have a pencil. If not, just try to memorize, maybe tear the page where you're at. But you're going to star things that you like. Something you read in there that you're like, oh, that I think I would include that in mine. You're going to X out things that you're like, that doesn't work for us, or I don't like that for whatever reason. Just put a little X by something you didn't like. And then a question mark might be a wondering, a question you have. And here's what we're going to do. You're going to look at 1. A partner's going to look at number 2. A partner's going to look at number 3. And then you're going to have a conversation about what you saw. You are not going to read the whole thing to them, but you're going to give them a summary of, this one was kind of done this way. The tone was sort of this. Here's some things I liked. Here's some things I didn't like. So you're just annotating here for, I think I'm going to move that to 3 for 3 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, let me try to pull you all back together here. So it's always interesting for me to hear what people like and don't like, right? We've all got different parenting styles. When I talk with teachers about classroom management, we have different personalities. That's fine. That's going to kind of shape how we do this sort of thing. The first one is actually a media agreement that a school hands out to their families, and it's left with open blanks so that they're trying to make it be an open-ended agreement where parents and kids come together and talk about, and they're giving parents suggestions. You might want to have some rules around this. You might want to have some rules around this for the school laptop. The next one is a letter from a mom to her child. And it's got a really different tone. And some people like that and some people don't like that. Like one of the things I like about it is where she says, and you will fail, and I will take the phone away, and we will start again. Because I really like that modeling of like, of course, we're not perfect. And by the way, if you have a teenager and they're on social media, they are seeing a world where everyone's putting out only perfect images of themselves. They see that all the celebrities and actually all of their friends have a better life than them. They're prettier, they're having more fun, they're more fit, they're more athletic, whatever your kid's into and looking for, they're not seeing people's bad days. No one's posting, here's a photo of my cereal that I ate this morning and it's really boring. Right? They're posting the photo of the buffet on the yacht. And then that makes us all go like, oh man, my life's not as glamorous. But they're also looking at people that look good because people only post filtered photos of themselves looking good. And they're waking up with a pimple on their face and they're feeling like, man, I didn't need that. I'm struggling. And then they look at everyone else look amazing. My point being, it's helpful for them to know that we're not all perfect and that we don't have a perfect standard for them either. One of the things we can do as a parent actually is to let them know when we've had a bad day, when we made a mistake, or when we made a mistake with them, right? I've apologized to my son for being sort of arbitrary and ridiculous about a rule when I realized, it's not dangerous and I was not being empathetic. I can apologize for that. I think I made a mistake. I can apologize for that. And it helps him to know that his dad's not perfect either. Of course his dad's not perfect. And he doesn't have this standard of perfection either. I love that she builds that in there. You're going to make a mistake. Our kids are going to make mistakes, and we're going to have consequences, and we're going to try again. So I like that about that one. And then the last one is sort of Common Sense Media's approach. If you haven't ever been to their website, you probably want to check it out. There's great parent resources there. A parent was asking me just yesterday about how old should their child be when they're allowed to use Roblox. And I said, oh, well, I don't know. I don't have your kid. I'm not in your family. But there's this great resource, Common Sense Media, where you can go and look up what other people are saying about this game. You can read a whole what parents need to know. It's written for parents. It's not for kids like, here's how to play, here's how to win. It's here's what you would need to know as a parent. Here's what you might be interested in knowing. Anyway, so they've provided this for families as well. None of them are perfect for you, but you might have found some things that you liked. I'm going to talk about some of the components as you think about creating your own for your family, what you might consider. The reasons why you're doing this might be included. What are the reasons why you would have an agreement? What are the reasons why you would have rules and boundaries for your child? Well, one, because you care about them and you want them to be healthy. And these things are amazing and have drawbacks. There's positives and negatives. So we're going to just say that out loud. The reason you have a phone is because there's positives. I can tell where you're at. We can text each other. You can take photos. And whatever else you've given them a phone. And we don't want it to take over your life. We want you to have balance. We know that social media can make kids feel bad. We know that social media can also make kids feel good and give them a creative outlet and make them feel bad. So we don't want that to happen. This is why. You might include the why. Collaboration. You might create it together. You might say to them, how long do you think you need to be on Instagram every day? And they might tell you a number that's lower than what you think. And so you're like, great, let's make that one of the rules. How much time do you need to play Minecraft every day? And they give you a pretty low number. You're like, yeah, we'll use it. Consequences. You may include the consequences in the document, or you might be the type of family who wants to wait till you see what happens. My family is one of those. We want to have natural consequences. We want to wait till the thing happens. We're not going to pigeonhole ourselves into a predetermined consequence. Sometimes I might say to my child, when we're dealing with a certain thing, it might be, if you cannot follow the timer on your own and put it away, I will take the iPad away for a day. Like if we're really working on something where it just needs to be clear, this will be the consequence, and then we'll try again. I'm fine with that. You might include consequences, you might not. The tone. Is it really top down? Or is it collaborative? Is it funny? Like the mom's actually trying to be silly? For some of you, you don't like it. But I think she's trying to be kind of fun. It's not a one-time and done thing. You're going to revisit this. That's part of the idea, is that thing doesn't become outdated. When you decide you're moving from a half hour to an hour a day of whatever it is, you would go adjust this. And you would talk with your kid about that it can be adjusted and it's going to be adjusted over time. These will not be the rules when you graduate from high school. We're going to change these over time together, but this is what we're going with right now. This is what our agreement is right now. Your kid does need to know that you're going to adjust it and that they could come talk to you about that, because you want them to come talk with you. You want them to tell you when this isn't working for me. You might think they only need an hour of Instagram. And then all of a sudden, all of their friends leave Snapchat and messages, and they're only texting each other through Instagram. You would want to know that. You would want to know that their friends had all migrated their communication to this one thing that might require more time. And you'd make that adjustment or not. But you also might be like, so you don't need Snapchat anymore? And you, right? And you might remove some things and make some adjustments. But you would want them to know they could come talk with you about that. And then, of course, modeling. Is there anything that you've written down that actually could be a family agreement? I do know a number of families who have an hour of no screen time together in the evening. And it's not planned, but they end up reading, right? This is time where we're just listening to music, reading, not being on a screen. Can we all do that at the same time? And that's always helpful, of course, with modeling. Okay, I wanted to share some actual boundaries, some rules to put in place, especially with our younger kids. The first one is filtering. You want to be thinking about filtering out adult content. You want to make these devices safer. I want you to do this in your head really quickly and then show me a number. How many internet-connected devices does your child have access to? How many internet-connected devices does your child have access to? There's no judgment here. I'm just wanting you to know what it is. All right, let me see if you're right. Let me see if you're right. Is there a smart TV in your house? Does your smart TV also have something else plugged into it that is also a smart TV? Like it's a smart TV plus it's got an Alexa, an Amazon Kindle Fire Stick, a Google Home, or what? Like, is there another thing there? Is there a PlayStation in the house, an Xbox in the house, a Nintendo Switch in the house? Is there an old Nintendo Switch in the house that's sitting in a drawer somewhere? Do they ever get to use your phone? The desktop, the family laptop? Is there an iPad? Is there an old iPad in a drawer somewhere? Do they have a phone? Do they have a watch? Okay, were you correct originally, or did you think of some more things? All right, so when we think about filtering, we got to think about all those things. You think you've blocked adult content because you blocked this, and there's an old iPad in the drawer that they could go grab, and that's not filtered. Right? So when you think about filtering, you filter at the box where the internet comes into your house, all of the devices your children can use, and then within those devices, let's just do smart TV for a second. The smart TV has to have a user account that's only for kids, or else they're getting into content that's meant for you. That's my 10-minute warning. Right, so you want to think about that. Then in the smart TV, there's Netflix and however many other things. But let's just go down Netflix. So Netflix, you want to be able to make sure that they can't get into Netflix and access the content you don't want them to access. So you want to think about your filtering strategy. If you think that it would be not healthy for your child to see some of the stuff that's out there made for adults, then you would want to do this. You would want to figure out, how do I make sure they can't stumble across content that would be really bad for them? So you want to turn on filtering. You want to have a phone curfew. You want to have a place where the phones go to bed. You do not want the phones in the bedroom. This is like the number one rule that we can tell parents that is 100% backed by science. Sleep disruption leads to mental health issues. It leads to anxiety and depression. The scientists are arguing about social media impacting mental health. They all agree on not having sleep impacts your mental health negatively. And so have a family phone area. Some families, everybody puts it there. Actually, I was talking with a student here who said her family does that. They all put their phones away in one spot in the evening. But you don't have to do that, right? You're an adult. You get to do what you want. But your child should be doing it themselves, not you taking it away from them. We would want to train them to have some self-management. Part of that is following the rules. You're going to check. There'll be consequences if they don't. They don't have their phones staying up all night scrolling. In high school, every high school I go into, I'll walk through the hallways and I'll hear kids bragging about how they were up till 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And then what's the other kid say? Well, it was 3:30. That's how unhealthy can we be? And often it's hard to put down. They didn't want to stay up any later, but this is difficult. So they need help. They need you having a rule that starts when they're young so that as they get older, we don't have to change that. We've always, by the way, if they don't have a phone yet, but you've got an iPad, it's out of the room. The gaming console really shouldn't be in the room because you're sleeping and they're using it. I just talked with a mom who said her 8-year-old has been getting up in the middle of the night because the update to the game comes at 2 or 3 a.m. But it's U.S. time, and you actually get more points if you download it earlier. I didn't understand. I didn't know what was going on. Of course, talk to the kids. You'll know exactly what's going on. But anyway, she was like, no. Right? But she had no idea because the console was in the bedroom. You want to turn on Ask to Buy. If your kid has an Android device or an iPhone device, I don't know what it's called on Android, but it's through Family Link. On iOS, it's through Screen Time. It is the thing that says they can't just download whatever they want. They can't get a new app. They can't download the calculator app that is actually not a calculator, but something to hide things from their parents. They're not going to get to have that app because they have to ask to buy everything. They don't just have their own password to download stuff. It is connected to your account. You got to set that up. I'm not going to explain it here, but it's on every iPhone. It's on every iPad. You want to be on their devices. You want to be interacting with them. If they get Snapchat, you get Snapchat. If they got Instagram, you get Instagram, right? We talked about that in the previous session. We want to be on these devices with our kids. Maybe it's actually you and Grandma. Why not? Grandma's got Snapchat. She should be on there with my kid. The more adults in their lives, in their online lives, the better, if they're known adults. The phone basket. You've got everything under control in your family for your 12-year-old, and then he invites his 12-year-old buddy over, and that 12-year-old buddy has a phone in his pocket, and they go up to the room, the bedroom, and you have no idea what's going on. And they've got access everything in the world device in the kid's pocket. So some families have this rule. I learned this back when I was actually teaching in Prague, which would have been 2010. And this family had the phone box, the device box, they called it. I watched as 6 high school kids, 15, 16, 17 years old, came into the house and they just dropped their phones into this basket and ran up the stairs. And I was like, what was that? Nobody told them what to do. This is a house they came over to frequently. And the rule in that house was you put your devices in the phone basket. You can come use them whenever you want to, but I don't want other people's kids in my house causing some sort of damage to another human or themselves by making poor decisions on these devices. You want to come use them, you use them in the public space and you text your parents or whatever you need to do. I'm not controlling your device use. I'm just saying it's going to be right here next to the device box. And when everyone goes into closed doors and I don't know what's going on, I know that it's not happening here. We use devices in public spaces and this is the device box. This is, I got 2 of these things confused. This is more about having a family chat group that you're modeling. We use devices together. You're not alone on this device. Do you have a distress signal? You need to have a conversation with your child when they get a phone, when they have a device, that they can text you and have a secret emoji that means, I need your help. Because their friends, if you show up all of a sudden to pull them out of a tricky situation because their friends are drinking and they don't want to be drinking, or their friends are getting into trouble or vandalizing things and they don't want to be a part of this, they need to be able to text you, I'm having a great time. Secret code that says, I'm actually not, I need you to come rescue me. Because they can't call you and say, hey mom, my friends are misbehaving. I need you to come get me. Right? They got to save face. And then some families have this. They have the password envelope, where every family member puts their passwords into this envelope, and the envelope gets sealed up and put away in the safe or whatever. Your promise is you're not getting into your kids' stuff. But if ever there was a situation where you couldn't find your kid, wouldn't you want to have access to all their social media and their messages and everything? And similarly, if you didn't show up one day, wouldn't your spouse kind of want to be able to get into the stuff? And so this is a family who just said, this is just us kind of trusting each other and knowing that if there was an emergency, we could find the other person, we could get into their stuff. And so everybody puts the password in there and you file it away and nobody gets into it unless all of a sudden somebody's missing. That might seem like bonkers to you and unnecessary. Kind of makes sense for someone like me who's traveling all the time. And if I don't come home, wouldn't my wife want to be able to figure out the stuff from logging into my thing? So it makes sense if you do this early and you're not worried about your kid, but when they're a teen, maybe later they are, but you've kind of already set this in place. This is what when I learned this from a family, this is what they were talking about. Okay, so that was that. I do want to just remind us that conversations about our online lives should be as frequent as our offline lives. We have these rules and boundaries. We don't just institute them. We institute them through lots of conversations and talking, and we change them over time. And our goal is, again, to get our kid to be an independent, ethical decision maker. And so we're going to shift stuff over time. But these are some things you might want to think about having in place, including the contract. It's not a contract. It doesn't mean they'll never break the rules, but it does mean that you've had a conversation and it's posted on the refrigerator, which is a reminder, hey, maybe we should revisit that. Maybe we're starting to get away from that. Let's have a family conversation. For those of you who have been with me, how many of you have actually been with me for every session at this point? Has anybody made, oh, wow, okay, yeah. That's the rock star crew. Okay, I'm sorry if you've had to hear some of my stories twice or 3 times. Yikes. Okay, but thanks for being here, folks, and having these conversations. Again, all of these sessions will be on video, shared out by the school. They are much more boring if you're watching them online versus than if you come and have these conversations. So thanks for being here. It's really impactful for you to hear other ideas from other people and to share yours, because you might have the idea, the boundary, the rule, the conversation that helps someone else have a better relationship with their kid. And that's what it's all about. Thanks so much for being here, and I will see some of you later this evening. Thank you. And I will remind you, we have 2 sessions tomorrow. I think they're in the morning. One of them is social media, gaming, and mental health, and the other one is let's talk about sexting and pornography. I will say it again, please don't avoid that, the pornography session, because you're worried that other people are going to think that your child has a problem. You want to be here for that conversation. Because you're going to want to have the conversation with your child about that tricky stuff. Hope to see you then.